I used to work for this organization, and I was at a training event, and they brought in like a regional trainer. The trainer asks the question. He was like, okay, when a person leaves a company, who are they quitting? Are they quitting their bosses, or are they quitting their jobs? The person I'm sitting next to just like blurts out. She's like, well, obviously they quit their jobs, and I threw my hand up and I was like, no, actually, they quit their bosses. And she looked at me and she looked so offended, because I mean, she was the boss's boss, right? So this kind of meant that if anybody was quitting, it was on her, and or it was somebody that she was directly responsible for. And I remember she looked very offended, and she's like, well, no, that can't be true. That's garbage. And the trainer was like, no, actually, this is a thing. Like, they've studied it, and he asks everybody, if they've like heard of who Simon Sinek is. And if you're in the leadership space, you probably heard his name being used. I like to reference him as far as like infinite game theory and stuff like that. And I was one of two people in that room that raised their hands. And this really shook me, because this organization is about like leadership skills and development. I mean, it's not like their primary thing. They're like, it's a family thing organization, but they really pride themselves on being good leaders within the community. This was not anywhere close to the radar of any of the other like managers that were in that little training. And I wanted to talk about this because, it's oftentimes, now mind you, there's something like, I think, okay, let's look at global literacy rates. So the last time global literacy rates were at about 10% or 12% was in the early 1800s, like 1820 or something. Global literacy rates were like 12%. So where do you think leadership skills are today? And like naturally learned leadership skills, right? So like no formal training, no meetings and stuff like that, no training events. They're at about 10% right now. So, we're like 200 years behind. But think about all the organizations that are in the world. How many people are employed around the world? I think Walmart employs like 2.1 million people. And to say that only 10% of those people have any sort of actual like real inherently learned leadership skills. And here we are at a leadership training event, an event designed to train these people. And mind you, they probably haven't been trained in this for most of their lives. And so a lot of these folks, these are holding higher positions in company, right? They're holding the CEO suite, or, the C-suite executives. They're the CEO. They're the managers of managers. And these people have little to no training. And I'll be honest, that training event was pretty cool. We learned some things, but we didn't learn a lot. And actually, as a leadership coach, I would say that we didn't really learn a lot that was actionable. It was really hard to pull information away from that training event that was of any value. I mean, we did kind of like an alignment test, one of those like self-assigned like alignment graphs to see where you stand in your life goals. And we learned some things about, when a person quits their job, who are they quitting? Their boss or their workplace, right? We learned that sort of stuff. But this wasn't really something that we walked away with learning a lot of information and, a lot of actionable steps. So I wanted to tell you this story today because this is something that's always stood out to me. Like the gap between where we think we are and where we actually are is much bigger than you actually think, right? Like I think all of us are really close and we're really zoomed in. We need to zoom out and really see that a lot of the skills that people think they understand about other people, about training, we just lack. And even in organizations that pride themselves on having these things, these inherent natures, they're not inherent. And the training is not really complete. Now, I'm not here to dog on it. I really just wanted to highlight it. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Think about those numbers. So most organizations, it's about a 10-to-1, 8-to-1. For every 10 employees, you have a manager. So like I mentioned Walmart earlier, so an organization like that employs 2.1 million people, that means they have 200,000 managers. And out of those 200,000, only 10% of those people have like real inherently learned good leadership skills. And for the rest, they have to have training. And that training might not be that like great, honestly. Like it might be pretty mediocre. Let's see. Can you see him? Yep, there's a deer. Welcome to Ashland. Deer just hanging out on the streets. Poor homeless little guy. Doesn't have a wood to go to. Anyway, I bring all that up to say this, right? Leadership skills are really more about self-development and how you lead yourself, because how you lead yourself is how you lead others. So if you're not controlling, or if you're not growing as a person in how you treat yourself and how you treat those around you, no real amount of leadership training events are going to level up that skill, right? This really has nothing to do with how, you build a strong team, because you build a strong team by having strong connections with people. So leadership skills are all about having strong connections with people. And if you don't have a strong connection with yourself, if you don't have like strong morals that you stand on, how can you have strong connections with anybody else? All right, that's it for today. Thank you.